If you inspect your life right now, your bank account, your relationships, your physical conditioning, your career ceiling, you are looking at an exact physical blueprint of your internal self-image. Most people believe they are limited by their environment, their luck, or their resources. In behavioral mechanics and human profiling, we know the truth. You are capped by the operational limit you have subconsciously assigned to yourself. Your mind will never permit you to out-execute the identity you hold in your head. You can set all the ambitious goals you want. You can write down plans, build vision boards, and force yourself into temporary bursts of motivation. But if your internal baseline views you as fragile, undisciplined, or unworthy of high-status outcomes, your nervous system will register those high goals as a threat to your identity. The moment you start making real progress, your brain will trigger subtle, highly efficient self-sabotage mechanisms to pull you straight back into your comfortable, familiar baseline. If you leave right now, you will keep fighting the same invisible ceiling, wondering why your effort never translates into permanent transformation. Stay right here. Over the next few minutes, we will break down the exact behavioral mechanics of identity, dismantle the subconscious scripts keeping you small, and install an unshakable operational framework that fundamentally changes how you see and command yourself. When you profile human behavior under stress, you quickly realize that people do not rise to the level of their conscious desires. They fall to the level of their subconscious self-image. Your self-image functions as an internal thermostat. If a room is set to 68 degrees and the outside temperature spikes to 90, the system turns on the air conditioning to bring the environment back to baseline. The human mind operates on the exact same cybernetic loop. If your self-image is calibrated to mediocrity, vulnerability, or low execution, any sudden surge in success creates intense cognitive friction. Your brain treats high performance as an anomaly, an uncomfortable deviation from who you truly are. To resolve that friction, it deploys anxiety, procrastination, and self-doubt, cooling your momentum until you are back at your accustomed level of comfort. Every time you describe yourself, you are issuing a direct command to your nervous system. Notice the language low authority operators use daily. I'm just bad at public speaking. I always drop the ball under pressure. Or, I'm just an anxious person. These are not harmless observations. They are identity declarations. When you repeat these statements, your brain logs them as gospel truth. It begins filtering your external reality to confirm that bias, seeking out micro-failures to prove that your negative self-assessment was correct. You become the author of your own psychological cage, using your words to lock the door from the inside. You cannot lie to your central nervous system with shallow, positive thinking. Standing in front of a mirror and chanting mantras about being confident or successful produces zero structural change if your brain holds years of data proving you lack discipline. The human mind respects evidence, not wishes. To fundamentally rewrite how you see yourself, you must stop trying to change your mind with words and start changing it with behavioral proof. You need to collect cold, unvarnished physical data that contradicts your old identity. When you honor a promise to yourself in total obscurity, when you execute a difficult task despite physical fatigue, you deposit raw behavioral proof into your internal database. To shift your self-image, you must alter the relationship between your conscious mind and your automatic reactions. Begin observing your micro-behaviors with ruthless objectivity. Pay attention to how you slump your posture when a high-status individual enters the room, how you rush your speech to avoid taking up space, or how quickly you apologize when you have done nothing wrong. These tiny non-verbal leaks are physical manifestations of a degraded self-image. The moment you catch yourself slipping into these submissive patterns, intervene immediately. Correct your posture, slow down your vocal cadence, and hold your physical frame steady. By forcing your body to adopt high authority posture, you send a reverse physiological signal to your brain, demanding that it upgrade its internal self-assessment to match your outward stance. When you begin treating yourself like a high-value operator, your old identity will stage a counterattack. Your mind will try to convince you that this new, disciplined approach is unnatural, arrogant, or doomed to fail. Surrounding operators who are comfortable with your old, predictable baseline may also push back, attempting to pull you back into your former role. This friction is not a sign that you are doing something wrong. It is empirical proof that your internal thermostat is being forcibly recalibrated. You must learn to stand firm in that psychological heat without flinching. Accept the temporary discomfort as the required toll for dismantling a lifetime of low-level programming. The architecture of the self-image represents the invisible, cybernetic control mechanism that governs every action, choice, and micro-behavior you exhibit throughout your lifetime. Far too many people operate under the dangerous delusion that how they view themselves is merely an emotional state, a fluid, subjective feeling that fluctuates based on daily mood, social praise, or temporary setbacks. In behavioral profiling and advanced human dynamics, we recognize that the self-image is not a feeling at all. It is a rigid, subconscious operational ceiling. It acts as an absolute governor on your nervous system, setting the precise boundary limits for your wealth, physical performance, relational authority, and capacity to handle high-friction environments. Your conscious mind may harbor grand ambitions, elaborate long-term strategies, and intense desires for high-status outcomes. But if those aspirations exceed the internal baseline programmed into your subconscious mind, your neural architecture will actively intervene to enforce your historical identity. This internal mechanism functions identically to an industrial thermostat set in a climate-controlled environment. If a thermostat is calibrated to 68 degrees and the external temperature suddenly surges due to an unexpected burst of heat, the cooling system immediately activates, working relentlessly to bring the room back down to its programmed baseline. The human mind operates on the exact same cybernetic feedback loop. When you experience a sudden breakthrough, a wave of professional success, or a moment of elevated performance that exceeds your established self-image, your central nervous system registers that sudden elevation as an uncomfortable anomaly, a dangerous deviation from your known reality. To resolve the cognitive friction between who you claim to be and who your brain believes you are, your subconscious deploys rapid self-sabotage routines. It introduces unexpected bouts of procrastination, acute anxiety, uncharacteristic mistakes, and self-doubt, systematically cooling your momentum until your real-world output drops back down to match your internal baseline. Because the human brain prioritizes internal predictability over external victory, it will willingly destroy your real-world progress to maintain psychological consistency. The brain's primitive architecture perceives any shift away from a familiar identity as a direct threat to survival, regardless of whether that familiar identity is healthy or deeply destructive. If your subconscious self-image is calibrated to view you as a victim, a perpetual underachiever, or someone who collapses under high-stakes pressure, it will work tirelessly to gather evidence that confirms that precise narrative. You can attempt to override this system through raw willpower, surface-level motivation, or temporary bursts of effort, but willpower is a finite neurochemical resource that inevitably depletes. The moment your conscious vigilance slips, your automated subconscious programming reasserts control, pulling you straight back down into your historical operational zone. To break through this invisible ceiling, you must stop treating self-perception as a matter of self-esteem or positive thinking, and begin treating it as an engineering problem. Transforming your trajectory requires a systematic, tactical overhaul of the baseline data your nervous system uses to define your limits. You cannot simply wish your way into a higher operational capacity while leaving your underlying self-image intact. Until you dismantle the old, low-status programming that dictates your boundaries under stress, every goal you set will remain a temporary illusion, destined to be pulled back down by the unyielding weight of your true internal baseline. The principle of subconscious identity protection dictates that the human nervous system prioritizes internal psychological consistency over real-world external victory. The subconscious mind operates as an automated survival mechanism, continuously evaluating incoming data to ensure your actions, environment, and social status align precisely with your established baseline identity. When your conscious ambition drives you toward a goal that exists beyond your current self-image, whether achieving financial dominance, commanding a room, or maintaining absolute physical discipline, your brain registers that higher standard as an unfamiliar, high-risk threat. Because the primitive architecture of the mind equates the unknown with danger, it will deploy aggressive, highly efficient self-sabotage routines to neutralize your progress, forcing your behavior back down into the predictable boundary of your historical status quo. This protective mechanism operates through a series of subtle, subconscious interventions designed to dismantle your momentum before you reach a point of permanent transformation. When you begin outperforming your old self-image, the mind experiences intense cognitive dissonance, a destabilizing friction between the high-status reality you are attempting to create and the low-status identity it holds on file. To eliminate this internal tension, your brain releases neurochemicals that trigger sudden fatigue, acute self-doubt, uncharacteristic procrastination, and irrational fear. You start missing critical deadlines, making unforced tactical errors in high-stakes interactions, or finding convenient excuses to step back from opportunities. These behaviors are not accidental lapses in judgment or simple failures of discipline. They are calculated, subconscious maneuvers executed by your own nervous system to shield your old identity from being erased. Far too many individuals misinterpret this self-sabotage as a lack of talent, capability, or external resources, failing to realize that their own mind is actively weaponizing their energy against them. The subconscious mind would rather keep you trapped in a familiar, painful failure than allow you to step into an unfamiliar, high-status success. It perceives the old, degraded identity as safe because you have already survived it, whereas a new, disciplined frame requires an unknown level of energy, accountability, and exposure. As long as your baseline identity remains unchanged, any surface-level progress you make will trigger an equal and opposite internal reaction, ensuring that your long-term output always snaps back to match your subconscious expectations. To overcome subconscious identity protection, you must stop treating your mind as a passive ally and begin managing it as a stubborn, resistance-heavy system that requires systematic override. Recognizing that your brain will actively fight high-level execution allows you to anticipate self-sabotage before it manifests in your behavior. When the subconscious attempts to deploy anxiety, hesitation, or rationalizations to pull you back into your comfortable baseline, you must learn to recognize those signals not as valid reasons to stop, but as empirical proof that your internal limits are being actively forced to expand. You must willingly endure the acute neurochemical friction of the transition phase, refusing to yield your frame until your nervous system is forced to accept your elevated performance as the new, non-negotiable baseline of your existence. Auditing the internal narrative requires recognizing that every word, phrase, and description you apply to yourself acts as a direct, high-level command sent straight into your autonomic nervous system. The subconscious mind possesses no sense of humor, no ability to detect sarcasm, and no capacity to evaluate whether a statement is objectively beneficial or deeply destructive. It simply receives input and systematically alters your physiology, body language, and behavioral choices to maintain alignment with that input. When an individual routinely utters phrases like, "I'm always terrible under pressure," "I can never stick to a habit," or "I'm just a naturally anxious person," they are not offering neutral, self-aware observations. They are issuing binding identity declarations, explicitly programming their central nervous system to manufacture micro-behaviors, vocal hesitations, and postural collapses that continuously validate those negative scripts. This constant stream of internal self-talk constructs the invisible architecture of your daily performance. In behavioral mechanics, language does not merely describe your reality, it actively constructs the neurological parameters of what you can achieve in any given situation. When you declare a weakness as an intrinsic part of your core identity, your brain logs it as a fixed law of your existence. It begins filtering your external environment through that exact lens, aggressively searching for confirmation bias while ignoring evidence of your capability. The moment a stressful situation arises, your mind retrieves your established narrative, triggering elevated cortisol levels, muscle tension, and a collapse in vocal authority. You effectively train your own nervous system to fail by providing it with a continuous stream of low-status, defeatist instructions. Most people remain completely oblivious to the sheer volume of negative programming they broadcast to themselves daily. They allow passive, automatic scripts to run endlessly in the background of their minds, wondering why they struggle with low confidence, erratic discipline, and a constant sense of internal friction. They treat these internal monologues as immutable truths rather than recognizing them for what they truly are: bad software running on high-powered hardware. Every low-status description you repeat reinforces a degraded baseline, convincing your subconscious mind that you are an underperforming, high-risk operator who cannot be trusted with significant responsibility or authority. Reclaiming your internal narrative requires an immediate, unyielding protocol of linguistic hygiene. You must begin auditing every single sentence that leaves your mouth or occupies your thoughts regarding your identity, capacity, and limits. Whenever you detect an automatic identity statement that reinforces weakness, fear, or incompetence, you must immediately intervene and dismantle it. This is not about engaging in superficial, feel-good positive affirmations, but about demanding absolute precision and discipline in your internal dialogue. You strip away helpless, absolute labels and replace them with objective, operational facts that place power and agency directly back into your hands. By forcing your internal narrative to align exclusively with high standards, discipline, and emotional control, you command your nervous system to rewire its baseline, elevating your physical frame, vocal presence, and real-world execution to match your upgraded mental software. Behavioral precedence over believing establishes that the human nervous system cannot be tricked, affirmed, or manifested into a high-authority self-image using words alone. The central nervous system is an unyielding data processor that measures cold, physical reality, holding zero respect for wishes, vision boards, or surface-level positive thinking. Stand in front of a mirror and repeat daily mantras about being confident, wealthy, or disciplined all you want. But if your brain possesses years of internal data proving you break promises to yourself, surrender under stress, and procrastinate when friction appears, it will reject those affirmations instantly. The subconscious mind operates strictly on evidence. Attempting to change your identity without altering your behavioral baseline creates intense internal dissonance, signaling to your brain that you are delivering an incongruent, low-status lie. To fundamentally rewrite how you see yourself, you must abandon the flawed belief that your mindset must change before your behavior can shift. In advanced human dynamics and behavioral profiling, the sequence is inverted. Action precedes identity. You do not think your way into a new way of acting. You act your way into a new way of thinking. Every single action you take, no matter how small, functions as a vote for the type of operator you are becoming. When you execute a difficult task despite physical fatigue, when you honor a commitment in complete isolation with zero audience to validate you, or when you hold your physical frame steady during a tense confrontation, you deposit undeniable behavioral data straight into your subconscious database. This steady accumulation of hard evidence is the only mechanism capable of overriding historical self-doubt. The brain cannot argue with physical proof. When you consistently pile up instances of clean execution, emotional restraint, and relentless discipline under stress, your neural pathways are forced to adapt to the new reality. The old, degraded self-image begins to dissolve, not because you convinced yourself it was false through intellectual debate, but because the old narrative can no longer withstand the sheer weight of your daily physical outputs. You build an unshakable, authentic confidence that is anchored directly to your proven track record of real-world execution, rather than fragile, manufactured emotion. Shifting your self-image through behavioral precedence requires treating every daily choice as a high-stakes data point. You must become hyper-aware of the microtransactions occurring between your intent and your physical action. The moment you permit a gap to exist between deciding to do something and actually doing it, you provide your brain with data that reinforces unreliability and internal weakness. Conversely, when you eliminate the negotiation period and execute instantly, you condition your nervous system to view you as a decisive, high-authority operator. You stop begging your mind for permission to feel confident and instead force it to recognize your authority by overwhelming it with an undeniable, non-negotiable stream of discipline, focus, and uncompromising execution.